The boy's leg is being twisted in an iron device, slowly, by a master who finds amusement in the experiment, and the boy is speaking calmly, as though discussing the weather of another country. He warns, in the same even voice he has used all morning, that if the master continues, the leg will break. The master continues, and the leg breaks, and the boy, without altering his tone, observes that he had said it would. Whether this story is true in every detail, we cannot know. It comes to us through later sources, through Celsus by way of Origen, through the gossip that gathers around any man who becomes famous for his patience. The boy in the story would grow into the philosopher Epictetus, whose name in Greek means simply acquired, a possession, a thing owned. And the lesson the story carries, whether literal or legendary, is the lesson he would spend the rest of his life teaching, that there is a region of a human being into which no master, no instrument, no circumstance can enter, and that the whole task of philosophy is to know where that region begins. We are told, by Aulus Gellius and by others, that Epictetus was born around the year 50 of the Common Era, in Hierapolis, in Phrygia, in what is now Western Turkey. We do not know his given name. The name by which we know him is the name of his condition. He was brought to Rome as a slave, and there he became the property of a man named Epaphroditus, himself a freedman, who had risen to a powerful position in the household of the Emperor Nero, the slave of a slave, the possession of a possession. And it was while he was in this condition, owned and disposable, that he began to study philosophy under the Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus. Consider what this means. Consider it carefully, because the whole of what follows depends upon your taking it seriously. A man who could not choose where he slept, what he ate, when he rose, where he walked, whether his body was beaten or unharmed, whether his leg was sound or shattered, was permitted, by an arrangement of his master, to attend lectures on the nature of human freedom. And he listened, and he made of those lectures the substance of his life. And when eventually he was manumitted, and went to teach in his own school, first in Rome, and then, after the philosophers were expelled by Domitian, in Nicopolis on the western coast of Greece, the doctrine he taught was the doctrine he had practiced in chains. That doctrine is the subject of this lesson. Epictetus called it, in the opening of the Discourses, the distinction between what is in our power and what is not. The Greek phrase is ta ephemin, the things that depend upon us, the things that are up to us, and the whole of his philosophy proceeds from a single observation, which he states at the very beginning of the Enchiridion, in the translation of George Long. Of things some are in our power and others are not. In our power are opinion, movement towards a thing, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own acts. Not in our power are the body, property, reputation, offices, and in a word, whatever are not our own acts. Read that list slowly, because it is the foundation. In our power, opinion, choice, desire, aversion, the acts of the mind, the judgments we form, the assent we give or withhold. Not in our power, the body, property, reputation, offices, everything outside the inner motion of the will. Now, on first hearing this, one may be tempted to object. The body is mine, surely. My reputation is at least partly the result of my actions. My property is what I have worked for. How can these things be said to lie outside my power? And Epictetus would answer, and does answer repeatedly throughout the 4 surviving books of the Discourses. They lie outside your power because they can be taken from you. The body falls ill, property is seized, reputation turns, office is withdrawn. If your peace depends on any of these, then your peace depends upon things that another may dispose of, and a peace that another may dispose of is no peace at all. It is a debt. The principle, then, is this: internal liberty under external constraint. The recognition that freedom is not the absence of chains upon the body, but the absence of chains upon the judgment. The slave whose mind has consented to slavery is doubly enslaved. The free citizen whose mind is governed by his fear of losing his estate is, despite his legal status, the property of his estate. Epictetus saw this with a clarity available, perhaps, only to one who had stood on the slave block and known precisely what it meant to be owned. Let us turn now to the circumstance of his life, because the principle does not float free of it. The principle is the lived shape of the life. We do not know much of his childhood. Hierapolis was a Greek-speaking city of some prosperity, known in antiquity for its hot springs and its textile dyes. How he came to be enslaved, we do not know. Many slaves in the Roman world were born to slave mothers. Others were captured in war. Others were exposed as infants and raised for sale. By whichever path, he arrived in Rome, probably as a child, probably during the reign of Nero, and was placed in the household of Epaphroditus. Epaphroditus is a figure of some interest. He had been Nero's secretary for petitions, and he is the man who, according to Suetonius, helped Nero kill himself when the soldiers came for him in the year 68. He was, in other words, close to the heart of the empire's most volatile court, and his household would have been a place of intrigue, of fear, of sudden reversals. To be a slave in such a household was to be exposed to the rawest forms of arbitrary power. A word could elevate you, a word could destroy you, and the words came from men who themselves lived in terror of the emperor's mood. It was in this house, we are told, that Epictetus's leg was injured, whether by Epaphroditus directly or by some accident or illness. Origen, writing in the 3rd century, repeats the story of the broken leg. Simplicius, in his commentary on the Enchiridion, says Epictetus was lame from childhood. The truth is probably that he limped badly for the whole of his life, and that the cause was known to those around him, and that he did not dwell on it. What he did was study. Musonius Rufus, a Roman knight who had turned to Stoic philosophy, was at this time the most respected teacher of the school in Rome. He taught that philosophy was not a matter of words, but of the conduct of a life. He taught that women should be educated as men were. He taught that one should eat simply and dress simply and bear hardship without complaint. He was exiled by Nero, then exiled again by Vespasian, then permitted to return. He is the kind of teacher a slave with a limp might have found, and did find, and made his master in the only sense that mattered. After the death of Nero, in circumstances we cannot reconstruct, Epictetus was freed. He began to teach in Rome. He gathered students. He attracted attention. And then, in the year 89 or 93, the date is uncertain, the Emperor Domitian, suspicious of philosophers, as he was suspicious of everyone, expelled them from Rome and from Italy. Epictetus left. He crossed the Adriatic. He settled in Nicopolis, a city on the western coast of Greece that had been founded by Augustus to commemorate his victory at Actium. It was a busy port. Travelers passed through. Students came. In Nicopolis, he lived simply, in a small house with, we are told, almost no furniture. He had a clay lamp after a more valuable iron lamp had been stolen from him, and he is said to have replaced the iron with clay because clay was less worth stealing. He never married, though late in life he took in an infant who would otherwise have been exposed, and he found a woman to help him raise the child. He taught from morning until evening. He did not write. The discourses we possess, 4 books out of an original 8, were taken down by one of his students, Arrian, who would later become a Roman governor and a historian. Arrian insists, in his prefatory letter, that he has tried to reproduce the very words Epictetus spoke. The Greek is plain, conversational, urgent, the Greek of a teacher who has no time for ornament because he is trying every day to wake his students up. This is the man, then, who teaches us the principle. A lame ex-slave living in a borrowed Roman colony on the Greek coast, instructing the sons of senators and merchants and soldiers and the occasional emperor's friend on what is and what is not in their power. A man whose every external circumstance had been for half his life at the disposal of another, and who had concluded from that experience not that freedom was impossible, but that it had been misunderstood. How did the principle function for him? Let us look at the texts. In the first book of the Discourses, in the chapter on what philosophy promises, Epictetus speaks of a man who comes to philosophy and complains that he is not getting better. Epictetus answers, in Long's translation, "What does philosophy promise? Does it promise to procure anything external? Heaven forbid. The matter of it is the soul of each individual. The soul of each individual, not the circumstances of the soul, not the fortunes of the soul itself. This is what philosophy works upon." And so when a student asks Epictetus what to do when he is threatened with exile, with imprisonment, with death, Epictetus answers repeatedly by drawing a line. The threat is directed at the body, at the property, at the office. The threat cannot reach the will. The tyrant says, "I will chain your leg." Epictetus answers in one of the most famous passages of the Discourses, "He will chain my leg, but not even Zeus himself can get the better of my will." Hear that sentence. He had a chained leg. He knew what it was to have a chained leg. He had limped on a chained leg, perhaps, or on the memory of one, for decades. And what he says is not that the chain does not hurt, not that the chain does not exist, not that the body is unimportant. What he says is that the chain stops at the leg. It does not reach the will. The will is elsewhere. The will is not subject. Consider another passage. In the first book, in the chapter on the things which are and the things which are not in our power, Epictetus imagines a man frightened by the prospect of losing his position at court. He says to him, "If you wish to be a philosopher, prepare yourself from the very first to be laughed at, to be sneered by the multitude, to hear them say, 'He has all at once returned to us a philosopher, and whence does he get this supercilious look?' Now do not have a supercilious look indeed, but hold on to the things which seem to you best, as one appointed by God to this station. The instruction is double. Do not be afraid of the mockery, because the mockery cannot touch what matters. But also do not return the mockery in kind. Do not become haughty. Do not despise the very people whose opinion you have just declared not to be in your power. The freedom is internal. It does not need an audience. It does not need a victory." And there is, throughout the Discourses, a particular relationship to the body which is worth pausing over. Epictetus does not pretend the body is nothing. He calls it, in one striking phrase, a poor little body, a paltry slave. The translation is George Long's, and it preserves the diminutive force of the Greek. The body is small. The body is borrowed. The body will be returned. To despise it would be foolish, because despising it would be granting it the importance one is denying. But to identify with it would be to confuse oneself with one's lodging. The body is the house in which you live. It is not you. When he is asked, in one of the discourses, what one should say when ill, Epictetus answers, "I will praise God." When asked what one should say when shipwrecked, he answers, "I will praise God." The praise is not a denial of the illness or of the shipwreck. It is a recognition that one has been given a part to play, and that the part one is given is not in one's power, but the playing of it is. He uses the metaphor of the actor often. You are an actor in a drama of such a kind as the author chooses. If short, then a short one. If long, then a long one. If he wishes you to act the part of a poor man, see that you act it well. And so with the part of a lame man, a magistrate, a private person. There is a quiet ferocity in this. Epictetus is not consoling his students. He is not telling them that things will be all right. He is telling them that the question of whether things will be all right is the wrong question, because the answer is not theirs to give. The question that is theirs is, how will you bear what comes? And the answer to that question is the whole of what he calls Prohairesis, the faculty of choice, the moral purpose, the inner direction of the will. Prohairesis is the central word of his teaching, and it has no comfortable English equivalent. It is the seat of judgment. It is what decides whether to assent to an impression or withhold assent. It is what we are, more truly than our bodies, more truly than our reputations, more truly than our circumstances. When Epictetus says, in another famous passage, that no one can harm you without your consent, what he means is that harm requires the participation of your prohairesis. The blow falls on the body. Whether the blow is an injury to you depends on whether you judge it so, and the judgment is yours. This is, on first encounter, a difficult and even an offensive doctrine. It seems to imply that the slave on the auction block is responsible for his own slavery, that the abused is responsible for his suffering, that all wrong is in the head of the wronged. But this is not what Epictetus teaches, and it is important to be careful. He does not say the slavery is illusory. He does not say the blow does not land. He says that the slavery and the blow belong to a category of things that happen to you, and that the question of who you are in their happening belongs to a different category, and that confusion between the two categories is the source of most human misery. The slave who knows he is the slave only of his master is freer than the consul who is the slave of his ambition. And here we approach the heart of what he taught, and what the broken leg, whether historical or legendary, was meant to illustrate. The broken leg in the story is the demonstration of the doctrine. The master can break the leg. The master cannot break the steadiness of the speaker. The voice continues, even and observant, because the voice issues from a place the master cannot reach. The leg is the master's. The voice is the man's. Let us now state the structural lesson, plainly, in the form Epictetus would have wanted. There is a region of yourself that no circumstance can compel. This region is not your body, which can be confined, struck, made ill, made to die. It is not your property which can be taken. It is not your reputation which lives in other people's mouths. It is not your office or your title, which are gifts of fortune and revocable by fortune. The region is the faculty by which you judge, choose, assent, refuse. It is the inner motion of your will. Whatever is outside this region is, in the strict sense of the word that Epictetus uses, not yours. It is on loan. It may be recalled at any moment. If you build your life upon what is on loan, you build upon what may be recalled, and your life is, accordingly, recallable. If you build your life upon what is not on loan, upon the inner motion of the will, you build upon what cannot be taken, because nothing external has the means to reach it. The lesson is not that external things do not matter. The lesson is that they do not matter in the way you have been taught to think they matter. They are the material upon which your faculty of choice works. They are the part you have been given to play. The good of a human being is not in having been given a particular part. It is in playing well the part that has been given. This is why Epictetus could say, and meant, that he was free in the household of Epaphroditus when his legal status was that of a thing. The chain was on his leg. The chain was not on what he was, and it is why he could say, and meant, that many a senator in the forum was a slave, although the law called him free. The chain on the senator's Prohairesis was the chain of his terror of losing what he had, and that chain had not been imposed upon him by anyone. He had forged it himself, link by deciding that his good lay in what could be taken from him. The principle, then, is a redrawing of the boundary of the self, not the body, not the goods, not the name, the faculty of choice. And the practice of philosophy, for Epictetus, is the daily discipline of remembering where this boundary lies and of refusing to let one's peace cross it. He gives, in the Enchiridion, a practical instruction. When you see anything desirable, say to yourself, "This is not in my power." When you see anything fearful, say to yourself, "This is not in my power." When something happens to you, ask, "Is this in the region of my will, or is it outside?" If it is outside, it is not, properly, an event in your life. It is an event in the world. Your life is the response. Your life is what your prohairesis does with what arrives. This is internal liberty under external constraint. It is not the dismissal of the constraint. The constraint is real. The leg is breaking. The exile is being imposed. The illness is taking its course. The constraint is acknowledged. The constraint is named. And then, in the space behind the constraint, in the small lit room of the will, a man stands and is, in that room, sovereign, because no other can enter it. Epictetus died in Nicopolis, an old man, sometime around the year 135. He had outlived Domitian, who had exiled him. He had been admired by the Emperor Hadrian, who is said to have visited him. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who would write the Meditations decades later, would record his debt to Epictetus through the lectures of Junius Rusticus, and would echo the discourses on nearly every page of his private journal. The lame slave, who had been moved across the empire as a piece of property, became the teacher whose phrases the most powerful man in the world wrote down at night in a tent on the Danube to remind himself how to live. He owned, at his death, the clay lamp, the small house, the books he had used to teach, and the child he had taken in. The lamp, after his death, was sold for 3,000 drachmas by a collector who hoped to acquire something of the philosopher's wisdom by acquiring the object he had touched. Epictetus, we may assume, would have laughed. The wisdom was not in the lamp. The wisdom was in the place the lamp could not reach. Now, as we come to the close, consider what he is asking of you. He is not asking you to pretend that what hurts does not hurt. He is not asking you to perform a contentment you do not feel. He is not asking you to accept injustice in the world or in your life, or to refrain from acting to change what can be changed. He is asking you something narrower and harder. He is asking you to locate in yourself the place that nothing external has authority over, to find it, to know its boundaries, to stop spending your peace on the things outside it. This is difficult work. It is the work of a lifetime, and Epictetus knew it was. He did not promise that you would master it. He promised only that it was the work worth doing, because all other work, all the work that pursues what cannot be held, ends in the same place, in the discovery that what you spent your life on was never yours. So I leave you with the question Epictetus, in one form or another, asked his students every day. What, in this circumstance you are now in, this room, this body, this hour, belongs to your Prohairesis, and what belongs to the world? And if you cannot tell, yet which is which, that question is itself the beginning of the practice, and may be carried with you into the next hour and the next, until the boundary becomes clear, and you know where you end, and where the chain that is not yours begins. Farewell.